Hello to you all and welcome to another video on the X Type. This one's even less about headlights and more about the car itself and its suitability in the modern world, so hopefully you guys enjoy it. Find me a person who likes the X Type and you'll get your stalwart lover of the all-wheel drive V6 or even the diesel workhorse fanatic, but you very rarely hear the same said of the 2.1, how awesome a vehicle it might be. Why might that be? Well, I mean, to be fair, before we go any further, as a 3 litre owner, I'm a mega fan of the early all-wheel drive systems. I think the cars are great fun to drive quick, and the system's very forgiving, mainly because the car's quite underpowered. But it hasn't tainted my view at all of the 2.1, and so I'll attempt to make that clear in the following video. As ULEZ expanded in late August 23, a fair number of diesel X-Type owners in Greater London actively got rid of their non-compliant cars and left the model altogether, when there was actually an option worthy of a little research. Now, the 2.1 V6 is the lesser valued younger sibling of the 3 litre and the 2.5, and historically it's always been cheap. It's been touted as a sales rep alternative to the 3 Series and the CLKs. It was a full premium offer really into the sales rep market where the Mondeo had quite a reputation. They didn't want to fully transfer that reputation across to the Mondeo, although in some circles it sort of has done. The 2.5 and the 3 litre were just far too expensive on benefit in kind, which is a taxation in the UK. And the fuel usage was also, even back in the day, a bit of a consideration for most reps. So if a diesel was to be avoided, the 2.1 was absolutely a great option to have on the table. If you compare it to other left field car choices like the sort of Saab 9.3 perhaps of the time, the 2.1 X Type was cheaper. It carried a little bit more of a status symbol because you couldn't necessarily tell it too far apart from its bigger brothers other than the exhaust and the badging. And so it was a bit of a status symbol for a few at the time. But obviously, being that it could be supplied in a tax minimizing spec, poverty spec, XL kind of thing, as well as luxury, it can be a challenge sometimes finding one with the right build specs to suit your needs. So having digressed slightly from the original mention of ULEZ, I'm just going to bring you back round to that for a moment. The car is fully Euro 4 compliant in so much as the emissions exceed the requirements for Euro 4. So despite it only being Euro 3 certified, it is compliant. You can also see that the NOx emissions are fully compliant with Euro 5 and 6 as well, with a limit of 0.06 grams per kilometre of NOx, and the X-Type producing just 0.044. So it makes it, at least in the present and foreseeable moment, fully compliant, I suppose, with London's ULEZ zone. So that, by extension, should exempt it from surcharges in any other UK-wide emission zones. But I suppose the question is, why buy the 2.1 when the 2.5 and the 3 litre are also ULEZ compliant? It's a very good question. And there's a very simple answer in a way. It's overall economy. There are some key differences between the 2.1 and its bigger 2.5 and 3 litre stablemates, and those can be found almost entirely within the engine and drivetrain. Obviously the all-wheel drive system is entirely missing. That makes the 2.1 front-wheel drive, so although that means you can't launch it off the line like a champion drag racer, it does also mean that you're saving about 10% loss of power through the drivetrain, and honestly I believe that's a bit conservative because the auto box in the 3 litre is pretty awful. And in the 2.5, if you've got a manual, you're going to have less comparable transmission loss, but the auto is honestly awful. And that's one point of note really for the 2.1. Many of them are manual 5 speeds as well. The Jaguar auto box was a pricey upgrade, and again I struggle to understand why, because it is pretty awful. And if you've ever had a close look at the all-wheel drive system, you'll see how undersized, or in another aspect I suppose perfectly engineered, depending on your mindset, the components are. Any drivetrain issues in the all-wheel drive cars are expensive to remedy, and although they're not hugely common and they'll do hundreds of thousands of miles, those things, when they go wrong, they're going to cost you money. Be it the transfer case, which is super expensive, the rear diff, axles, you avoid the vast majority of that just by owning a 2.1. Front drive shafts are relatively inexpensive, which is a major benefit, major positive here for the 2.1. So not only does the loss of the all-wheel drive system make the car more transmission efficient, it also offers a weight saving. It's around 100 kilos, actually, giving it a range of just over 400 miles to the tank when you look at the original spec, which is on par with many 4-cylinder 2-litre cars of the same era. So it demonstrates that the V6 can be an efficient motor when it's driven kindly.
I mean, my own 3 litre will return 18 to 20 mile a gallon on a predominantly urban commute, whereas a 2.1 will return over 25. There are instances where it will become less fuel efficient. If you are stuck in mainly stop-start traffic, it's not going to do you any favours. But if you're relatively well moving, it's not going to be a problem. But again, question, why the 2.1? Well, you're more likely now than ever before to find a low mileage cherished example of the 2.1, and it will be at an affordable price because it's less in demand. They are less desirable, mainly because of the cooing over the all-wheel drive models, and I'm sorry, I'm guilty of that, and that's fine, but their loss is your gain, and I kind of urge those of you who are considering an X-Type and living in or near to London's ULEZ to just give the 2.1 some of your attention. Now, I had a little look through eBay and Auto Trader and other sort of outlets that I might go shopping for cars on, just to have a little look to see what the pricing was like of the 2.1 and the offerings as well, what was available at the time. Um, I was actually quite surprised. There's a lot of choice in the 2.1. Most of them are dealers when you start looking at Auto Trader, so the pricing is a little bit iffy. And you do have to be careful because you can get some right dogs tarted up as decent motors. Bear in mind that the Leaper was never a factory option, so somebody's obviously really cared for this car at some point. It's going to split the room, but it is what it is. You need to take a good look at the pictures, especially the ones of the rear cabin and the front cabin. It'll give you an idea of the spec of the car. In an ideal world, you'll have an SE model. That SE model will have heated seats. It'll have full electric windows front and rear. It'll have the split folding rear seats. Um, all these sorts of things. That particular one is missing its engine cover. So every car that's prior to 2004 will have an engine cover. That one's been removed at some point. Don't know why. It shouldn't put you off too much. Anyway, you're looking here in the back. You haven't got any keep fit windows, so it's a pretty straightforward car on this occasion. It's got a reasonable spec, but have a good look around the vehicle. You're not going to have as many issues in terms of the drivetrain as you will do with the bigger ones, but you will still have the same old ones like the rusty sills, any electrical issues. They still suffer from the same sorts of problems. Yeah, look out for the old droopy headliner as well. That sometimes makes an appearance on these sorts of cars. So this one's a little bit cheaper. Again, 2004. So we're talking just before the sort of facelift came in. There were the three model ranges. There was the 2001 to 2004. Then there was the model year 2004 update. You can kind of tell by the old wheel on this one. It's the pre-2004 model year update. And then you had the full facelift that came out in 2008, I believe, with the updated grille and bumpers and all the rest of it. But you can see that one's not quite poverty spec, but certainly fairly close. Got some wear there. You got no heated seats. At least you got a CD player. No navigation, things like that. But that might be attractive to you because you can retrofit a universal double DIN system. I mean, the original system won't have any roads in it that were after 2012, so you're a little bit out in a way. Now, this is a great example of a car. It actually reminds me of the first 2.5 I ever went to see. It looks absolutely lovely. It's brilliant. You start getting an idea that it is poverty spec. It's got no heated seats. It is a sport, which is technically the low end of the offering. You spot there the keep fit windows in the back. So if you never carry passengers, it's fantastic. But honestly, having windy windows in the back of what should be a premium car, I don't think it's a good look for me. If you're driving around London in that, you're a stronger person than I am. But you can see the overall offering is actually fairly reasonable. You've got some high mileage examples in there, and people are still asking for premium prices on those, and I dare suggest that they're never going to get them. But you should be able to get a very decent 2.1 for at least 2,500. If you're looking to get something and run it for years and years and years and buy a low miler, then you're going to have to spend a little bit more or wait for a bargain to come up on Facebook or eBay or similar. But they can command a little bit more of a premium. Again, windy windows. If you have access to breakers, and there are several on Facebook, several on eBay, you can actually retrofit the electric window kit. That's not an issue. I believe you're going to need wiring for all four doors and transfer it across. It might even be easier to simply buy doors in the same color and transfer them. I'm not entirely sure, but that's something for you to work out. All depends on the price of the car and whether it matches your budget. This car has been a bit of an enigma to me. I've seen it a couple of times, and I think the cost is too high anyway. But before we get into it, it's got a sunroof, and you'll see very, very few sunroofs available on X types in general. So why they didn't go and add any additional extras, I have no idea. There's no heated seats. You've got windy windows in the back. That really does perplex me. But you know, obviously somebody somewhere loved the car. And quite recently as well, because it looks in extremely good condition. So it may be worth a punt for somebody. But I'm prepared to wager that you don't want to spend the rest of your day browsing the internet with me for X types. So, you know, take yourself onto your nearest comfortable place for buying cars, where you're in your little safe space, and just go shopping. Have a little look around, go and test drive a couple. You'll find the 2.1 is actually fairly responsive, and a V6 in any displacement is actually a lovely engine to drive. So, you know, for somebody who's looking for a Jaguar to drive it in the ULEZ zones and not spend a fortune on either a new car or fuel, I do think the 2.1 is an absolutely brilliant offer from Jaguar 20 something years ago, which works in today's day. So I'd love to encourage a bit more of a discussion on this topic. So you know, please feel free to pop your comments in. Keep it sensible. I think it's important to have this conversation. The 2.1 gets a lot of abuse because it's sort of regarded as the baby of the bunch, but the baby of the bunch may well be the most affordable and appropriate car to have if you are within an emission control zone of some sort. So look forward to engaging more with you guys. Look forward to reading your feedback, and shout if there's anything that you think we should take a look at in a bit more detail, either on this topic or around it. Thank you very much.